modern world is witnessing a silent collapse, a transformation so profound, yet so quiet, it has largely escaped the headlines, until now. Across the globe, the indicators are flashing red. Suicide rates among young men are climbing. Depression is reaching epidemic proportions. In our universities, the seats once occupied by young men are increasingly empty, leaving a generational gap in education and professional potential. Many describe a persistent feeling of purposelessness, a confusion about identity and their place in a world that seems to have moved on without them. When we speak of the castration of a generation, we are not just talking about a single event. We are describing a multifaceted process. It has a literal, biological dimension, seen in the precipitous decline of testosterone and fertility that has been documented for decades. But it is also metaphorical. It is the emotional, social, and economic diminishment of what it means to be a man in the 21st century. The thesis of this investigation is simple but chilling. This was not an accident. It was systemic. It was a failure of our institutions. In the chapters ahead, we will examine the biological attack, the chemicals and environmental factors reshaping male physiology. We will look at an educational system designed for compliance, which often pathologizes the very traits that define boyhood. We will explore the cultural machine, the media, entertainment, and digital traps that have replaced heroic role models with caricatures. And we will ask the most difficult question: who benefits? Who profits from a dependent and demoralized male population? This is not about grievance or victimhood. It is about objective observation and the search for scientific truth. By grounding ourselves in endocrinology, psychology, and history, we can begin to see the architecture of the crisis. But most importantly, we will look for the road back. We will define what healthy, purposeful masculinity looks like in a modern context. We will explore the role of struggle, mentorship, and responsibility in the development of a man. From educational reform to environmental policy, the solutions exist. They simply require the courage to implement them. To solve a problem, one must first name it. One must see the invisible threads that have been pulled for over 50 years. It is time to look beyond the noise and examine the data. It is time to understand what has happened to our fathers, our brothers, and our sons. In this series, we will hear from the experts, the endocrinologists, the psychologists, and the educators who are sounding the alarm. And we will hear from the men themselves, those who have lived through the system and those who are finding their way out. This is the story of a generation at a crossroads. This is the search for the stolen soul of the modern man. In part 2, we begin at the foundation, the biological attack. In our search for answers, we must begin at the most fundamental level, the biological foundation of manhood. The assault is not just cultural, it is chemical. For decades, a silent tide has been receding. Study after study has documented a population-level decline in testosterone that is unprecedented in human history. The primary suspects are endocrine disruptors, synthetic chemicals like BPA and phthalates that mimic or interfere with our natural hormones. They are everywhere, in the pesticides on our food, the coatings of our receipts, and the very air we breathe. Our water supply, too, has become a conduit for hormonal interference. Pharmaceutical residues, including synthetic estrogens, often evade standard filtration. This constant, low-level exposure is fundamentally altering the internal environment of the modern male. Then there is the food we eat. Processed diets, high in industrial seed oils and soy, carry their own hormonal consequences. We have traded nutritional integrity for chemical convenience, and the price is being paid in male vitality. The most stark indicator of this biological retreat is the sperm count crisis. Since the 1970s, counts in Western men have plummeted by over 50%. Research led by Dr. Shauna Swan suggests that if this trend continues, we may be facing a total collapse of male fertility in the near future. As natural fertility declines, a multi-billion-dollar industry has emerged to fill the void, profiting from the biological diminishment of the male population. What was once a natural right is becoming a commercial service, accessible only to those who can afford it. But the attack is not just environmental, it is also pharmaceutical. We are medicating male behavior from a very young age. The overdiagnosis of ADHD has led to the mass medication of boys. We are suppressing their natural energy with powerful stimulants. This chemical convenience creates docile, manageable children, but at what cost to their developing hormonal systems. Then there are SSRIs. While intended for depression, they are known to have profound effects on testosterone and libido. By muting the emotional and biological highs and lows, we are creating a generation of men who are chemically disconnected from their natural drives. This biological attack is multifaceted, working from the outside in through our environment and from the inside out through our medicine. The modern man is navigating a landscape designed to diminish his physical and chemical essence. The data is clear, and the consequences are already visible in our society's health and vitality. But biology is only the beginning. Once the foundation is weakened, the system takes aim at the mind. In our next chapter, we will explore the educational system, a machine designed for compliance that often breaks the very boys it is meant to build. In part 3, we examine the classroom, built for girls, broken for boys. If biology is the foundation of the crisis, the educational system is the architect, a system designed for a specific type of compliance. Modern schooling is increasingly built for girls. It prioritizes verbal linguistic skills and sedentary behavior, traits that often clash with male development. Male learning styles, rooted in movement, competition, and risk, are often penalized rather than channeled. The war on recess has stripped boys of the physical energy outlets they desperately need. Rough play is no longer seen as growth, it is seen as a threat. The results are documented in the data. Boys are falling behind in college enrollment, graduation rates, and literacy, a gap that is widening every year. What was once a path to opportunity is becoming a gauntlet of failure for a generation of young men. Then there is the feminization of teaching. Male teachers, especially in elementary schools, have nearly disappeared from the landscape. For many boys, this means growing up without a single male authority figure in the classroom. They lose the vital power of male mentorship. Under zero-tolerance policies, normal boyhood behavior is increasingly criminalized. Aggressive play is pathologized. Boys are suspended for the very traits that used to define their energy. We are pathologizing the male essence before it can even mature. The school-to-prison pipeline disproportionately affects boys, turning a lack of compliance into a permanent record. We are demanding docility in exchange for education, and when they cannot comply, we medicate them. By the time they leave these halls, many have already internalized the message that their natural instincts are wrong. This is not just a failure of curriculum, it is a failure of institutional empathy for the male experience. But the mind is also shaped outside the classroom. Once the institution has finished its work, the cultural machine takes over. In our next chapter, we will explore the media, entertainment, and digital traps designed to keep men in a state of permanent distraction. In part 4, we examine the cultural machine. The educational system builds the walls, but the cultural machine furnishes the room, a constant stream of messaging that defines the modern male experience. In our media and entertainment, the heroic male role model has been replaced. The father is often portrayed as bumbling, useless, and fundamentally optional. The destruction of heroic archetypes leaves young men without a blueprint for strength and responsibility. They are given caricatures instead of characters. Video games have become both a refuge and a trap. They offer the struggle and achievement that the real world has increasingly denied them. Social media and pornography have fundamentally rewired the male reward system, a constant flood of dopamine that bypasses the need for real-world effort. The result is a profound social isolation. We are more connected than ever, yet men are reporting record levels of loneliness and status anxiety. This isolation often feeds the incel pipeline, where legitimate confusion becomes fuel for radicalization and further withdrawal from society. Nowhere is the cultural attack more visible than in the epidemic of fatherlessness, a systemic crisis that affects every aspect of a boy's development. The institutions, including the family court system, often operate with a documented bias against fathers, reinforcing the message that they are optional. The cultural messaging is clear. The presence of a father is no longer seen as a necessity, but as a luxury or even a liability. This constant pressure from the cultural machine leads to a state of permanent distraction and demoralization. The modern man is wandering through a landscape where his identity has been systematically deconstructed. But who is driving this machine, and why? In our next chapter, we look at the institutional and economic forces behind this transformation. We will examine the pharmaceutical companies, the fertility industry, and the political incentives for a dependent male population. In part 5, we ask, who benefits? The cultural machine is the engine, but institutions provide the fuel. To understand the crisis, we must follow the money. Who benefits from a dependent and demoralized male population? The pharmaceutical industry is a primary beneficiary. Male dysfunction, ADHD, and depression are multi-billion-dollar markets that thrive on long-term medication rather than root-cause solutions. A docile and medicated generation is a consistent and profitable customer base. The chemical convenience we examined in Part 2 is an economic imperative. The fertility industry, too, finds opportunity in the sperm count crisis. As natural conception becomes a rarity for some, the high-tech market for reproductive assistance continues to explode. Then there is the attention economy. Social media platforms and digital entertainment profit directly from male social isolation. The more disconnected a man is from the real world, the more time he spends in the digital trap. His time, his dopamine, and his data are the new currencies of an institutional machine that has no interest in his autonomy. Politically, a dependent population is often easier to manage. Strong, autonomous, and purposeful men are inherently more difficult to control than a demoralized and medicated generation. The medical establishment itself reflects these institutional biases. Men's health issues often receive a fraction of the funding and research dedicated to other demographic groups. We see a pendulum of gatekeeping and overprescription in testosterone replacement therapy, a lack of a cohesive, evidence-based strategy for male hormonal health. The male suicide crisis, though statistically overwhelming, remains an afterthought in public health investment and cultural conversation. The deconstruction of the modern male is not a conspiracy of individuals, but a confluence of institutional incentives. It is simply good for business. But institutions are made of people, and people can choose to see the data. They can choose to sound the alarm. In our next chapter, we will hear from those who are doing just that. We will hear the experts and the men who are finding their way through the machine. We will listen to the endocrinologists, Sever, the psychologists, Sever, and the fathers who have lived through the front line of the system. In Part 6, we hear the voices and perspectives. To understand the full scope of the crisis, we must look beyond the data and listen to the human experience, the voices of those on the front lines. Endocrinologists and reproductive health scientists are sounding the alarm on the biological collapse. They see the chemical shift in every study, a decline that challenges our very future. The decline is not just a trend, it is a fundamental shift in male biology that has been documented for decades, a quiet retreat of the chemical masculine. Psychologists specializing in male development observe a generation searching for identity in a system that has systematically deconstructed it, a search for meaning in a void. The archetypes that once provided a blueprint for manhood have been dismantled, leaving a void that is often filled with confusion and a sense of profound loss. Then there are the men themselves, sharing lived experiences of purposelessness, isolation, and the search for a way out. Voices that speak of a shared struggle. For many, the isolation is not just social, it is psychological. A feeling of being adrift in a world that no longer recognizes their value. We hear from the fathers who have lost custody battles in a biased system, men for whom the metaphor of castration has become a lived reality, a removal of the pillar of the home. The numbers tell a story of institutional bias that has systematically removed the father from the family unit, a data-driven confirmation of a cultural failure. But we also hear from those who overcame the system, men who found purpose through responsibility, mentorship, and agency, those who chose to build instead of withdraw. Journalistic rigor requires that we examine the other side, to steel-man the counter-arguments. Some argue this narrative is overstated, and that the shift is a necessary evolution. Feminist scholars may frame masculinity not as a crisis of the male essence, but as a necessary transition in a changing social landscape, a realignment of the old order. The danger of any crisis narrative is that it can fuel a sense of victimhood rather than agency. We must ask, does this knowledge empower or paralyze? Is it a diagnosis or a trap? In our final chapters, we will move from diagnosis to cure. We will define what healthy, purposeful masculinity actually looks like. In Part 7, we find the road back. If we are to find a way forward, we must first look back, to define what has been lost and what must be reclaimed. The road back begins with a definition of purpose. Throughout history and across cultures, the transition from boyhood to manhood was never left to chance. It was a deliberate, often difficult, and sacred process. Initiation rites provided a clear blueprint for initiation into the tribe. a recognition that masculinity is not something one is born with, but something one must earn. At the core of these models was the role of struggle. Modern life has optimized for comfort, but the male spirit thrives on the navigation of risk. Just as steel is forged in fire, the masculine identity is forged through the voluntary adoption of responsibility. Without weight, there is no strength. Healthy masculinity is not the absence of power, but the disciplined use of it. It is the capacity to provide, to protect, and to lead through service. It is the ability to maintain a steady course when the environment is chaotic, to be the pillar upon which others can lean. This process requires mentorship, the transmission of wisdom from one generation to the next, a connection that the modern educational and cultural systems have severed. Brotherhood and community provide the necessary feedback loop. They offer the competition that drives growth and the support that prevents isolation. In our modern context, reclaiming this blueprint does not mean returning to the past. It means translating these eternal principles into a new world. It is the search for a healthy, purposeful masculinity that serves both the individual and the society. A road back from the diminishment we have examined. But how do we build this road? In the chapters ahead, we will explore the concrete solutions, the movements that are already beginning to sound the alarm. We will examine educational reform, environmental policy, and the movements for fathers' rights and men's health. In Part 8, we explore the solutions. If the road back begins with an individual choice, it is sustained by the power of brotherhood. Men were never meant to carry the weight of existence alone. Throughout history, the brotherhood provided the infrastructure for male excellence, a community of peers who challenge, support, and hold each other accountable. The digital traps we examined earlier thrive on the absence of this connection. They replace the tribe with an algorithm, and the brother with a screen. Reclaiming the tribe means returning to face-to-face interaction. It means finding spaces where men can speak openly and work together toward meaningful goals. Mentorship is the lifeblood of this reclamation. The passing of wisdom from one generation to the next ensures that the blueprint for manhood is not lost. This begins with the father. A present, purposeful, and engaged father figure is the most powerful deterrent to the crisis of a generation. Beyond the family, supportive networks of men are emerging to fill the void left by failing institutions, providing the guidance and initiation that the modern world has discarded. There is strength in this vulnerability. The ability to admit struggle and to seek the counsel of brothers is a hallmark of the healthy male archetype. When men connect with purpose, they move from individual confusion to collective agency. They begin to build the world they want to see. The internal transformation is profound. A man who belongs to a brotherhood is a man who knows his value and his responsibility. We are seeing the first steps on the road back, a growing movement of men who are choosing to reclaim their essence and their future. In our next chapters, we will explore the specific solutions and movements that are already taking root. From educational reform to environmental policy, we will look at the men's health movement, fathers' rights advocacy, and the masculinity renaissance that is challenging the system. The solution is not found in grievance, but in responsibility, in the courage to lead and the wisdom to support. In Part 9, we examine the solutions and movements. If the crisis is systemic, the response must be as well. Across the globe, new solutions and movements are emerging to address the deconstruction of men. Educational reform ideas tailored to boys are gaining traction. Models that prioritize physical energy, competition, and hands-on mastery over docility. Environmental policy is taking aim at endocrine disruptors. A growing awareness of the hormonal impact of our water, food, and environment is driving a push for systemic cleanup. The men's health movement is shifting the focus from crisis management to biological optimization, a grounding in physiology and evidence-based vitality. Fathers' rights advocacy is challenging the institutional bias of the family court system, fighting for the vital presence of the father in every boy's life. The masculinity renaissance is synthesizing ancient wisdom with modern reality, reclaiming the archetypes of the provider, protector, and builder. While some aspects of the manosphere are controversial, the positive core is a call to responsibility and the pursuit of excellence. The solution is not found in grievance or victimhood, but in the radical responsibility of the individual to lead himself and his community. We see the success in the young men who are thriving, those who have rejected the docility of the system and chosen the path of agency. They are the blueprint for the future, a generation that is choosing to be the architects of their own identity. The institutional gears are starting to move. The data is becoming too overwhelming to ignore, and the human cost too high to accept. In our final chapter, we will bring it all together. A final call to awareness and a vision for the road ahead. The transformation of a generation begins with the transformation of the individual man. It is time to step into the light. We are not alone in this journey. A collective movement is forming, driven by the courage to see the truth and the wisdom to act on it. In part 10, the final chapter, the search for the stolen soul. Our journey through the architecture of this crisis has brought us to a singular truth. The search for the stolen soul of a generation is not a collective endeavor, but an individual quest. The castration we have examined, biological, educational, and cultural, was designed to keep this soul in a state of permanent dormancy. Every man now faces a choice: to remain a medicated and docile product of the machine, or to reclaim the agency that is his birthright. The road back begins with responsibility, the radical acceptance that while the system may be broken, the solution lies within the individual's will to lead himself. One man who chooses purpose over distraction can become a lighthouse for his family, his community, and his brothers. We see this transformation in the men who are already thriving, those who have rejected the caricatures and built a life of meaning and strength. They are the architects of a new masculinity, one grounded in biological reality, historical wisdom, and collective brotherhood. The dawn is coming, the data is being heard, the movements are growing, and the generation that was meant to be castrated is beginning to wake up. Look at the world, look at the data, and then look at yourself. The power to reclaim your soul has always been yours. The modern man is no longer a victim of his environment. He is the master of it, a provider, a protector, and a builder of the future. This was the story of a system that tried to diminish a generation, and the story of the men who chose to stand up instead. The search is over. The road back has begun. Thank you for watching our investigation into the modern male crisis. The road back begins with you.